All right, I think we can get started. Boker Tov, everybody. Yes, Chanukah Sameach. It's the second day of Chanukah, and it's always, I don't know, just extra interesting this year, especially. I think it's more in Canada than the United States. I think more people do go away here. Take off. First of all, yesterday was a legal holiday, also Boxing Day. I don't think it wasn't a legal holiday in the States, and I don't know the way it is. Just it's but when Hanukkah and Christmas, the holiday seasons mixed together, I actually like having school on Hanukkah because I think it's important that kids come to school on Hanukkah and you can teach about Hanukkah. But anyways, what can you do? And it's so ironic that all the yeshivas, even in Israel, they all give up for most of Hanukkah, all of Hanukkah, half of Hanukkah, sort of the holiday we celebrate, Zaydim Biyadoske Toratecha, that we can learn Torah. And that's the day we do less Torah. No, what can we do? That's the way the Jewish people work in Hanukkah. But so it is interesting. Okay, so I was debating how much to do in Hanukkah. I looked sort of my notes over the last few years what we did. So we actually never really discussed Maoz Tzur, I don't think, unless my notes are wrong, and even if they're right and wrong and did, so you can remind me what we said. But it actually fit in, I thought, extremely well, because we're up to Bilam which is the bracha against heretics. So we're not really going to, I don't think we're going to focus on that today, but just to make mention, of course, that's a bracha against informers. We'll talk about it. It has sort of a history. As we know, that's an added bracha, was not in the original Shmon Esrei. But what I find very interesting is that it basically that and Maoz, these parts of Maoz are polemics against our enemies. Vilam Shinim is a real, almost hate-filled blessing. They should have no hope. Hanukkah is all about hope. They should be destroyed. Ta'aker, Tishaber, Tamagarin, and Nusach Svart, it's even more. They have more adjectives, how to get rid of these people. So it's a very harsh bracha that we'll pick up, please God, next week. And especially the last paragraph of Maoz, the one that was censored for many years because it's very anti-Christian. So that's also, I just find that's an interesting parallel. And by the way, most scholars assume Vilma Shinim was really against the early Christians, against the Hebrew Christians who were part of the shul. They, when it took a while before Christianity and Judaism fully separated, and the early Hebrew Christians would come to shul. They were Shomer Shabbos, they kept kosher. They just believed in Jesus. Okay, I mean, whatever. It's at the time wasn't, I don't know how much of the, they invited as the son of God. I imagine that came later. I don't know enough about the development of Christian theology. But the rabbis were nervous. They didn't know who was and who wasn't. There were certain signs. So they composed this bracha. And if the chazan refused to say it, that was a sign that, of course, that he belonged to this Hebrew Christian, sect, and they removed him. But the truth matter, we have a number of polemics in our Siddur. The Siddur reflects Jewish history. I mean, Aleinu is, of course, a polemic. I'm just curious. How many people say that or don't say that? You do say it. How many people don't say it?
I say it.
You do say it. Everybody says it. Is there anybody here who doesn't say it?
I don't.
You don't. Okay. So
I don't.
right. So as you know, this was this was part of the original version, and I think in Gematria, Yeshu and Rik are the same. I don't even remember, but it's clearly Shemish Takmim Lehevav Rik Mipalim was a reference to Christianity. They bowed down to Narishkeit, and it was removed. I have to look. Was it removed by the Jews or by the Christians? You should know there was a lot of censorship that we removed. We were afraid to say because would be nervous if they found out about it. And there was stuff that the Christians took out from our stuff. But that's clearly not Christian polemic. So now it's been put back in the Siddur. I remember, if I can say this, when I was in Camp Moshava many years ago, I remember in B'nai Akiva seminar, so Yitz Greenberg came to speak for us. He was there over Shabbos, and he spoke about this. And I remember him saying why we shouldn't put it back, in the ecumenical era that we live in, and that Christianity and Jews have a much better relationship. It's not something we should say in our era. So it is curious, and they still put it in the Siddur, like in brackets. I think Art Scroll, I'll have to check, still has it in brackets. Anyways, right, never saw it till, yeah, of course. So anyways, Whatever. But that's not our topic. But just okay. So one thing, right before we get to Maser on Parshat HaShavua, that I thought was quite interesting. I mean, I heard this morning. I
The
was,
what?
yeah,
No? Okay.
was I was in Yeshiva at
Mhm.
Hakotel many years ago. So let's just take a look. It's about Yosef. It's really last week's Parsha, but okay, all the Yosef stories you read on Hanukkah. So I just want to show you something cute. I don't know what happened here. Let's share screen. That's not good. What just happened here? Okay, it's not allow Zoom reprint. Okay, oh boy. I'm not sure this is going to work. Do you see anything here?
No.
Okay, so I don't know. I have a new computer. Unfortunately, my computer, I have no idea why it's not letting me share my screen. And it says I'm the host here. Okay, we're going to have to do without it. I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay, anyways, the Gemara says it's better if you let me try one more thing, see if this works. Multiple participants. Okay, let's see. Talks about anybody know why what's the highest you can light the Hanukkah candles?
I think 10 or 20 tvachim.
So no, the minimum, the high, it's actually, no, it's 20, 10 tvachim is the lowest shear. I think you can light it for Chanukah candles under, but on a sukkah, you have to be at least 10 tefachim. A tefach is a handbreadth, it's about 3.5 inches. So 10 tefachim is about a yard, about 3 feet or so, about 36 inches more or less. So, okay, something happened here, and I'm going to give up in a second. Screens. Okay, desktop.
10 amot.
No, it's 20 amot.
Oh.
It's 20 amot. Okay, I'll have to get some. Okay, forget it. I apologize. So it's 20 amot. So the Gemara quotes like this. The Gemara has a teaching right after talked about Chanukah that the Mishnah says, Amar Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana said, Darash Rav Natan bar Minyomi. He's not like one of the more commonly people quoted. Rav Natan, the son of Minyomi, quoted in the name of Rav Tanchum. Ner shel Chanukah sheinicha lemala me'esrim amah. If you put the Chanukah candles more than 20 amot, that's about 30 feet. Well, let's assume an amah is 18 inches. Psula, it's invalid. Sukkah, just like a sukkah, like a mavoi. That's when you build an Erev. We're not going to get into that now. The parts of the Erev, the signal, the Erev cannot be more than 30 feet high. The assumption is people don't notice things that high. Okay, we'll leave that for now. Then the Gemara says like this: Amar Rav Kahana, it's the same Rav Kahana. Darash Rav Natan bar Minyomi, same in the name of Rav Natan bar Minyomi, in the name of Rav Tanchum. So this is a very common Talmudic technique, especially when it's an oral tradition. We often quote things, that the same rabbi says back to back, even though they have nothing to do with each other. That's the way it was normally explained, but I don't really think that's true. I mean, it's true that they'll quote it to remember, but they don't quote everything. It's not true that there's no connection. When they quote a statement, Amar Rav Shmuel and Bar Nachmani, or whatever, they quote a whole bunch of them. You have this very often. They quote something from the same name. They don't quote everything he said. They quote, 8 things he said or 4 things he said, and other things are spread in different places. So yes, it's part to remember, but it's also because there's a deeper connection. So on the surface, we're going to see there's no connection, but then we'll discuss there is a connection. What did he say? Darsh Mar Yomi Mishmei de Rav Tanchum, name of Rav Tanchum. My dichti. What is the meaning of the verse of Borek Ein Bo Mayim? The pit was empty, there was no water. So this is a famous Rashi from last week's verse, Torah reading. The pit was empty, they threw him into water. So if it's empty, there's no water. Why does the Torah have to say there's no water? So mimashmash and amarba borek, since it says the pit was empty, Eini odei she'ein bo mayim, don't I know there's no water? Elamat Talmud lomar, what does it come to teach us? Ein bo mayim, mayim ein bo. There was no water of al nechashim v'akravim yesh bo, but there were snakes and scorpions in it, even though there was no water. So what's the connection? So the symbol connection, like we said, it's the same person says it, but I think the deeper, it's just a cute idea that why did they throw him in the pit? Well, why did they throw Yosef in the pit? Uh-oh. Okay. Anybody want to volunteer? It's a
They didn't want to kill him
They
outright. They
didn't
had
want
to
to kill him,
discuss it.
right? Exactly. Reuben said, "Let's save him." What? And the Torah says Reuben was planning to come back and to save him. Whatever. That's okay. So, why would you throw somebody in a pit if there's snakes and scorpions? You may not live. We're in talk snakes, presuming they are poisonous snakes.
If the
Why?
Kisum-
So that's a pretty dumb move. You throw the guy into a pit, so he's gonna die of snakes and scorpions. So the answer is, well, because they couldn't see it. Why couldn't they see it? Because it was 20 amot deep. In other words, the same way. This is the proof. This is a proof to the Chanukah candle. You can't light Chanukah candles more than 20 more because you don't notice it. And remember, the whole point of lighting Chanukah candles, in theory, is
Persume Nisa.
notice it, Persume Nisa, so it gets all publicized. So how do you know that 20 minutes? Because they threw him into the pit of 20 amot, and they didn't know there were snakes and scorpions, because if there were snakes and scorpions, they wouldn't have put it in there. So that proves it. So that's just a cute idea. Of course, you would think if they threw somebody in the pit that's 30 feet deep, he would die on impact. So unless they lowered him, I don't know. I don't know. But these are questions I can't. I don't know how to answer. Okay, let's get to Maoz Tzur. And I feel bad because I was going to share my screen, but like I said, a new computer. So hopefully you have a Siddur. Otherwise, listen. It's okay. I think people know Maoz Tzur, by heart, at least the first stanza. So anybody know? I mean, it's interesting, and I think everybody sings Maoz Tzur. And does anybody know another tune for Maoz Tzur? By the way, Maoz Tzur Yeshua. Is there does it exist? I think when I was in yeshiva, they sang it to Mayidma. Asur Yeshuati Lechana Elishabeyati Kabeit Milati. That's a tune for Mayidita. But has anybody ever heard another tune for Maoz Tzur? Okay, good. Baruch Hashem, Jews around the world sing the same tune for Maoz Tzur. Okay, so when was Maoz Tzur composed? Does anybody know? Okay. So apparently, and the little again, these we have this by Geshem. Every once in a while, I got this, a whole row of commentaries on the Siddur. Basically, none of them talk about Maoz Tzur. The Otzer Tefillah that I use all the time has Maoz Tzur. It doesn't have one word of commentary on it. It's not in the Slot of the Brahman, and all. It's not in the Biurei HaTefillah, the new book put up by Rabbi Wogelmuth from Maimonides. It's like nowhere. They don't discuss it. I don't know why. It is a later day addition. Geshem, we explained that was only added in the 18th century, 17th, 18th century, which is quite late. People assume we've been saying Tefillah Geshem, for hundreds of years. The Tefillah Geshem that we say is a couple hundred years old. Anyway, so this seems to be composed in the 13th century or so. Who composed it? We don't really know. We know his name is Mordechai. How do we know his name is Mordechai? Because the first letter of every stanza spells the name Mordechai, which of course is a Purim name. But okay, we'll get there. But Mordechai, and he lived in Ashkenaz. That's the assumption. He lived in Christian Europe, which is why there's going to be an anti-Christian polemic. He lived at a difficult time in Jewish history, post-Crusades, and there's still pogroms and persecutions. This was, a very negative, a very dark time. When I say dark ages, in Christian Europe, it was dark ages for the world. It was also dark ages for the Jewish people. So, by the way, in general, you should know that the little that I know of the subject, Christian anti-Semitism really took off, if I can use that word, around the 11th century. The first 1,000 years, it's not that the Christians loved the Jews and they had rules and they had papal decrees that you couldn't marry Jews. Intermarriage, of course, was forbidden for Christians, obviously, but you didn't have the killing and the pogroms and the Jew as the devil and the Jew with the long nose and the horns and all those terrible images of the Jewry. That really, the Crusades, which began in 1096, that really marked a turning point, a great intensification of anti-Jewish out of Christianity. It was really in the High Middle Ages, when Ashkenaz develops, and of course that's why it was always better as a Jew to live in Islamic lands than to live in Christian lands. So, anyways, this is composed at a difficult time in Jewish history, under when Jews are living under Christian Europe, and but it's really only, and it basically is a history of the Jewish people. It's a history which we sort of do on Pesach too, of course. It's a history of the Jewish people um, through the persecution and the persecutions we've suffered throughout history. That's really what it is. A little bit, of course, the Jews were saved here and there, but the emphasis in each paragraph is the persecution we suffered by the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians, and the Greeks. Those are sort of the four stages. And then the fifth stage are the Christians, Edom. Well, Esav, Edom, that's how the rabbis always associated that with Christianity. But of course, you have the Egyptians, that's our first slavery. And then you have the Babylonians, that's who exiled us. We were in Israel. How long were the Jewish people in Israel, by the way? From the time we arrived in the time of Yeshua.
About 800 years.
Yeah, so exactly 850 years, I believe. Now, that's assuming the chronology in the Torah and should be taken literally. That's not for now, but as you know, that's not, we discussed many times, numbers are not always meant literally in the Torah. They always have images like 480 years till they've been to the temple. That's 12 times 40, each of the Shvatim. There's all kinds of, the way we use numbers, but assuming you can count the numbers and they are what it is, like always in Shoftim, this Shofet was 40 years, because 40 years is a generation in biblical narrative. 40 years is transition. 40 days on Mount Sinai, 40 days of the flood, 40 years in the desert, transformation, newness, a new generation. So it doesn't necessarily mean it was 40. It could have been 42 years or 28 years or 57 years. But I think 40 becomes the number. So that's a very fascinating subject, but not for now. But 850 years, and that's because the gematria or something, Vinoshanten, you'll be exiled from the land is 852. That's how the rabbis understood it. We read it on Tisha B'Av when we read about the exile from the land in Parshat V'Chanan. We're going to sin. Kitolid banim uvnei banim. You're going to sin, and you'll be thrown out of the land in terrible things. So the rabbis, it's hard for me to believe this in a total literal sense, but the Gemara says the gematria, the numerical value, I believe, in Noshatem is 852. So God was very nice. He exiled us after 850 years. So we didn't, he can't fulfill all these negative things because we weren't there for 852 years. It's only if we would be in Israel for 852 years, whatever the rabbis are trying to teach by that. But the idea we're in Israel 850 years, and then we're exiled by the Babylonians. And again, we come back 70 years later, and that's very difficult, how to compose those exact 70 years, and how do you count them? Again, Rabbi Leiptag actually gave a whole series on that, how those 70 years work. We assume, right, the Babylonians exiled, there are really two exiles, the Babylonians, 597 and 586. We know 586, the more famous one, but a lot of the leaders were exiled 11 years earlier in 597 BCE. Then you have the exile in 586 BCE, and then Cyrus the Great, the Persians take over, I believe, in 539 BC, and then the Jews are welcomed back. Cyrus the Great welcomed the Jews back. Rabbi Leipzig also gave a whole series on Cyrus the Great, and then the Jews are welcomed back, and very few Jews come back. We'll see very few Jews come back, and they built the second temple, which is a pale comparison of the first. But we have the Egyptian hardship, the Babylonian exile, the Persian, of course, that's the story of Purim and Haman. And then we come back, and the Jews don't really have autonomy. A lot of people think they came back in 516, whenever the second temple was built, and there are very few Jews. They're not. I think the Book of Ezra says 42,000 Jews came back. So that's very few. Most Jews stayed, and the Jews who came back were they weren't the cream of the crop. The Mishnah says, the Mishnah in Kiddushin says, who came back? The Mamzerim, the illegitimate children, the Shtuki and a Sufi. You know what a Shtuki is? A Shtuki means, who are your parents? Shh, talk, be quiet. Kids on the street. That's really what it is. You pick up some street, and a Sufi. You find a baby in the street, like the bamboo cradle. If you remember that book from years ago, this couple in China, found an abandoned baby and whatever, and how that baby brought them back to Yiddishkeit. That's a Sufi. You don't know who the baby. You don't know anything about the kids. That's what the Mishnah says. Yeah, it's some Kohanim, Levim, this and that, but basically it was the people who couldn't make it in Babel, who people who life was very good. Why are they going to leave? I mean, the parallels today are pretty obvious. So, I mean, Baruch Hashem, today we have many of the cream of the crop also leave, but and not many who were the first we went to Israel. People escaping the persecution from the Muslim lands. That's what happened. That's just the way it was. Anyway, so that's the Persian. Then we'll get to these paragraphs, and then so the Jews come back. But they're not really autonomous. They don't really run their own affairs until really the story of Chanukah, till the time of the Maccabees, and that's how the Rambam writes. The Rambam writes, before he discusses the miracle of the oil, the Rambam's reason we celebrate Chanukah is Chazrut Malchut Yisrael. I can't share my screen. Yeter mimatayim shana. If you look at the Rambam, the laws of Chanukah, the Rambam says the greatness of Chanukah is the Greeks persecuted us. They raped our daughters. They stole our money. Very interesting what he writes. And yet we fought back and we won and we came in, and the Jewish people then recreated. They had a Jewish state, yet termimatayim shana, more than 200 years, from around 165 BCE to the year 70, 235 years. So therefore, that's what we celebrate. And then we writes about the oil and about the dedication of the Beit HaMikdash. So, and then we had so it's interesting, we don't have really the Roman persecution, like the destruction of the Second Temple. I'm missing something. We don't, unless they somehow associated with that, Rome becomes identified with Christianity, because of course it was the Roman Empire that adopted Christianity. But of course that doesn't happen until the 4th century, if I'm not mistaken, that the Roman Empire officially adopts Christianity. So it is interesting. We know when we discuss Tisha B'Av and the Second Temple, we're focused on the Romans, but Maoz Tzur does not have a specific thing about the Romans. It really ends with the Greeks, and then it has a prayer to save us from the Christians. So that's kind of an interesting idea, because especially when we don't commemorate really the loss of the First Temple. I mean, we say both temples were destroyed on Tisha B'Av, but we're mourning the loss of the Second Temple. That's what everybody talks about, the year 70. You don't hear people talk on Tisha B'Av so much about the year 586. It's the Second Temple, because the assumption was we rebuilt the First Temple, though we don't have to mourn anymore. That was the question of Zechariah. And the idea was that we don't, it's generally assumed during the time of the Second Temple, why we're going to fast on Tisha B'Av, that we don't fast. So, okay. So that's just a very brief overview. And of course, the idea of Maoz Tzur, I don't want to say it, it's a story of Jewish history that unfortunately is we've had one exile or one persecution after another. It's sort of one long story, just different manifestations. But let's go through. I just want to point out a few highlights or things that I, sort of thought of on my own, because there were very little commentaries. I'm sure there's some stuff written, whatever. But if you have anything to add or ask, please do so. Okay. So the first paragraph, Maoz Tzur, the one we sing the most. So that really just talks about God is Oz. Oz is strength. The Shem Oz liamoite Maoz Tzur. Tzur is also strength. Tzur is a rock. Tzur Yisrael. So Oz and Tzur are sort of references to God protecting us. Maoz Tzur, like they have in the Declaration of Independence, or Tzur Yisrael, right? If you're the secular Jews, Rock of Israel, however they want to determine, but a rock means something permanent, something help you. Maoz Tzur Yeshuati. Obviously, he was referring to God as our rock and our salvation. Yeshuati. Lechana el l'shabeach. Lechana el l'shabeach. We say that in Yishtabach. No, it's pleasant for us to praise you. We want to praise God. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to praise God. Tikon beit tefilati, prepare our house, our prayer, and our house of prayer. Of course, that's the main function of the Beit Hamikdash. I think that's the main function of the Beit Hamikdash. Korbanot played, I would say, at most a third level importance in the temple. When Yeshayahu talks about the Beit Hamikdash, he says, "Vaviyotim el har kodeshi, bring you to my holy mountain, Har Habayit. V'simachtim bebeit tefilati, I will rejoice in my house of prayer." This came up on our December, our Christmas Chanukah Yom Yun the other day when Rabbi Weiner from LA was talking about the chapel. For those who were there, the interfaith, in Cedar Sinai Hospital in LA, which is a Jewish hospital, they have a shul in the middle, chapel, and the chapel is used by all faiths. So you can have a minyan there, and then you can have a Christian mass, then you can have an Islamic thing, and he discussed the halachic basis for that. And there were some poskim who didn't like it, but the many poskim who said, and they quoted the beginning when he wrote he sent the Shaila to Israel to Eretz Chemda, what they wrote back to him, Rav Nachum Rabinovich and others said, well, look at the Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash was Ki Beit Tefillah Yikarei L'Chol Amim. It's a place where all nations come to pray, and they weren't all praying to God, like to our God. They were praying to whatever they believed in. We didn't have like thing to watch like they do today. You're not allowed to pray if you're Jewish on the Temple Mount. But so it's a fascinating thing. That's what Yeshayahu says. And when Shlomo Melech built the temple, he said, Lishmoa el harinav el hatfilah, which you might recognize from the first night of Slichos, the piyut on the first night of Slichot, Lishmoa el harinav el hatfilah, to hear our joy and our prayer. That comes from Shlomo Melech's dedication of the Beit HaMikdash. So the main purpose of the Beit HaMikdash is a place of prayer. And the secondary purpose of the temple, or the next level, or maybe as important, is the gathering together of the Jewish people. That 3 times a year, and all the time, it's the central place of religious, or just gathering, Hakel Atam, when we gathered people, and Korbanos played, we had to bring Korbanos on special occasions on behalf of the nation, and individuals on special occasions, either because they did some kind of a sin accidentally, sometimes on purpose, or because they want to give thanksgiving. Then they brought a korban. We have korbanot chova, we have obligatory sacrifices, and we have korbanot nidava. Vayikra opens up with korbanot nidava. How does Vayikra open up? Adam ki akriv mechem korban or something, Adam, and that's the rabbis. Whenever the Torah uses the word Adam, it's all of humanity. Doesn't mean just Jews. Anybody, non-Jews, and the Mishnah talks about it. Non-Jews can bring a korban. Certain korbanot not, but non-Jews can bring korbanot to the temple. Adam, but the Torah begins with nedava. That's obviously to volunteer is much better. So that's what he says. Tikam beit tevilati, prepare my house of prayer at the temple. V'sham todah. And we will bring a korban todah, a thanksgiving offering. We don't want to talk about our sin offerings. The highest offering is a korban todah, and of course, there's a cute law. How long can you eat a korban for normally?
2 days, one night.
2 days and 1 night. That is correct. Because as we've mentioned many times, the time is different in the temple time, right? We always write Eastern time, Israel time, but there is temple time. And temple time, the day starts in the morning, not at night. We're so used to the day starting at night. And that when you brought a sacrifice, you could eat it till the end of the day, which meant the next morning. And then the first Mishnah in Brachot tells us, don't wait till the next morning. Wait chatzot, midnight, because we're afraid you may, by mistake, you'll eat it too late. That's the eating of the afikomen, right? You really have all night to eat it, but you want to eat it by midnight in case, you'll push it off. You'll accidentally eat it too late. But the day starts in the morning and ends at the night. As we mentioned many times, the beautiful explanation of Shimshon Raphael Hirsch that in the world is full of darkness. The day begins at night, and the job of the Jewish people is to bring light to the world, just like God. The first act of creation is light, and we're God's created in God's image. So we have to bring light to the world. So the day starts at darkness, but in the temple where God lives, it's light. So the day starts in the morning when it's light. It's a beautiful idea, I think. Anyways, that's what. So you can eat a korban for 2 days and 1 night. Let's turn this down. Except a korban toda. So if you brought it on Monday morning, you can eat it all day Monday, and all Monday night, and all day Tuesday till and all day Tuesday. So now, but a korban toda had to be eaten in 1 day. A Thanksgiving offering had to be eaten in 1 day, and the commentaries explain Persume Nisa. That's what Chanukah is about, to publicize the miracle. why do we celebrate Chanukah? Again, I wish I could share my screen, but you can look it up on Shabbos 21b. The Gemara says, after what happened, they made a holiday, b'halel u'b'hoda'ah. Those are the words. Hallel is singing praise. Notice they're different. Hallel is to sing praise, and Hoda'ah is thanksgiving, which we understand to be Al Hanisim. Al Hanisim is giving thank you, and Hallel is singing praise. They're connected, but they're slightly different. So Korban Todah, Hoda'ah, that of course very much goes into the theme of Hanukkah. And of course, when we light the candles, we have to publicize it, Persume Nisa. So a Korban Todah, we don't want you to eat it in 2 days. And remember, you're not allowed to have any leftovers on a Korban. You have to eat the whole thing. You're bringing a big fat cow, right, to eat. No, you got to invite like a wedding. You got to invite 300 people because you got to eat it. I don't know how many pounds of meat come, whatever. So you got to invite twice as many people. If you can make the party over, or you have to invite twice as many people to eat it. Otherwise, you'd have to half the people would just eat it, the leftovers, the next day. Barbecue half one day, barbecue the other half the next day. So this way we publicize the miracle. So that's very interesting, the way the Korban works. Okay. Then this also, when will this happen? When our enemies are destroyed. Mitzar haminabeach, from our tzarot, the enemies of the Jews. It's interesting how they translate it here. We silence the loudmouth foe. I don't know where you get loud mouth from. I'm not sure, but leitakin matbeach. Matbeach is to slaughter. So it can be referring to the slaughtering of the animals, but it also leitakin matbeach meets. When will we be? That's what I think it means. When will we be able to slaughter that? Mitzar haminabeach. When we get to hear the rhyming, of course. We didn't even talk about that. The rhyme of all this, of course. Every paragraph has its own rhyme. When we get rid of the enemies, azegmor, then I can sing. Can only sing. The Rambam writes that before the king has an obligation to destroy Amalek and then to build the Beit HaMikdash. Got to get rid of the enemies first. We'll sing. That's like Hallel. You have Todah and then you have Hallel, the singing for Chanukah Mizbeach. Okay, so that's the first paragraph that talks about the restoration of the temple, which of course is what Chanukah is all about. Chanukah Mizbeach. Now, in beginning the second paragraph, where the Reish of Mordechai, so they was going to first next paragraph is going to be about Egypt. Ra'ot Sava Nafshi. Evil, Sava, Besavata, satiated my soul. It's like I don't know, euphemism. It's like an ironic expression. I had so much. I was so full of Ra'a Sava Nafshi. Sava is normally I ate so much. I ate so much. I have to bless you, God. But here, of course, it's in a negative sense. Yagon kochi kila, because my strength was ended. Kila was ended. Yagon, this the anguish we discussed last week or 2 weeks ago. Last week and 2 weeks ago. Hashiva shovtein karishana vaser mimenu yagon vanacha. The role of the judges we discussed is to remove suffering. Yagon vanacha, sighing pain. But we went to Egypt. The yagon, because of the yagon, the suffering, my strength was ended. Kochi kila. My life was mar. Of course, we're in Egypt. Maror. They embittered our life. Right? Avodah kasha. It's so all the references here. You can just it's really beautiful. B'shibud malchut egla, because we were shibud. We were enslaved to the kingdom. The beautiful rhyme with an outstretched arm, biyad chazaka, biyado hagdula, God's great arm. Hotziat haskula, that's of course Bnei Yisrael v'atem tiyuli mamlechet am skula, we're a special chosen nation. Chel paro v'chozaro, the chariots, the Paro, the Egyptian, was the greatest army. V'chozaro and all his followers. Interesting, Zaro normally means his children. So I don't know if it means that it refers that the children of Paro drowned, or Vizaro means the Egyptian people, or both. It's poetic, whatever. But Chel Paro, and Chel Paro, of course, doesn't just mean Par, means the chariots of Pharaoh, the 600 chariots. I mean, remember, there were only 600 chariots that chased the Jewish people. The Ibn Ezra asked that question. I understand. there are 1.5 million, there are 2 million Jews who leave, right? 600,000 men between 20 and 60, and 600 chariots, and they're afraid of them. It's ridiculous. And of course, we know that's true. Even Ezra says, when you're a slave, you can't rise up. Everybody, unfortunately, we had that problem in the Holocaust. It's very easy for a few people when you degrade people and you get their kishkas out, you remove their spirit. They're very weak. So 10 people can control 5,000 people when the people are weak. They have to have the will to fight. And that's what Parah did. They took us out of it. So the Jewish people saw 600 chariots against the 2 million people. But they were nervous like anything. So that's the Chel Paro B'Chozor Yardu Ke'evan Mitzula. That's when we say that in Az Yashir. What do we say in Az Yashir? Remind me that pasuk. Yardu Ke'evan Mitzula. How does it go? So they sank like Telmot Yechasmu Yardu Ke'evan B'Mitzula. We say something like that. That they dropped like a rock. They dropped like a rock to the bottom of the of the sea. So here, yes, we were redeemed from Egypt. And the next paragraph, Tzur could show Hiviyani. So of course it took a long time. Tzur, in other words, in the Piyut, we're going from the drowning of the Egyptians to building the Beit HaMikdash. Well, what about the 480 years we just spoke about in a minute? What about the 40 years in desert? Obviously, he's pointing out, of course, our interaction with really those who caused our exiles. So Dvir Kodsho Heviani, he brought us into his holy place in the temple. The Gam Sham Lo Shakadati. Again, you hear the rhyme. Every paragraph has a different rhyme, but it wasn't quite there. Gam Sham Lo Shakadati. It was not quite there. Ubano Gesh Vehiglani. And the enemy came and he exiled us. Vehiglano. He's a dim Zarim Avadati, because I worship foreigners. This, of course, is what our sages say, that the first temple was destroyed because of the sin of idolatry, adultery, and murder, right? So, unlike the second temple. So, why were we exiled? That's how what the Paitan's taking the classical rabbinic interpretation, because we worshipped idols. V'yayin ra'al masakti, and I drank the poison. V'yayin ra'al. Now, of course, this could also, I don't know, this could be Gilui Arayot, the other sin that, why? Because, or also Avodah Zarah. There are two reasons why wine has to be kosher. All wine is ingrediently kosher. There's nothing unkosher about grapes. Every wine in the world, if you just look at the ingredients, I would imagine wine wouldn't need a hechsher, if not for the rabbi saying so. Well, what's not kosher about wine? So why don't we drink wine?
Because they used it on their korbanot.
That's one reason, and the second reason that's yain nesach, that wine was used in the religious ceremonies of the non-Jews. I still believe today. I've never been, of course, but they use wine in the church service today. That I don't know the whole theology, but wine is used very much, I believe, today in a traditional Catholic church. They use wine. So wine was used for idolatry purposes. What's the second reason we don't drink wine? The real reason, in other words, yain nesach probably doesn't apply to most wine. Sorry? Socializing, intermarriage. That's sort of avodah zarah and gilui arayot, because wine is a nice social drink. You invite your friend over, a nice bottle of wine. It's interesting, how that works today. This is very hard to explain to people, and people who aren't observant find this very, very difficult to understand. Which I get it, because although there's so many other ways to socialize, not with wine today, but that's but the rabbis made a law that's a rabbinic law. It's not the same reason. It's a very and there are many more leniencies because it's not idolatrous wine. That's what we assume most wine today. It's rabbinically prohibited. It's not really. We're not afraid. It was used in a religious service. But anyways, the poisonous wine, that probably is here referring to the religious service. Kimat she'avarti. I was almost lost. So I think what he's saying is, a Jew can eat treif and a Jew can be a Machal Shabbos, but he can still be Jewish. Once you worship idols, once you convert, that's it. You're out of the picture. I always used to say, I don't know, it's not true anymore. I mean, it's mainly true, but it doesn't have to be true. That's what intermarriage is about, right? Intermarriage in the Torah is only a negative commandment. There's no karet. It's not one. It's not like eating chametz on Pesach is an Easter karet. You're cut off from people. We don't have by intermarriage. And I've said I've occasionally said this, and it's a little bit wild. People flip out when you say it. According to the Tzur and other Rishonim, intermarriage is only a rabbinic prohibition. If you look in the Torah, in Sefer, in Parshat V'Chanan, where the prohibition of intermarriage is mentioned, it's very clear that the context is the 7 nations. Moshe tells the people who are going to enter the land, do not marry them, because they will take your people away. They will veer them away. So the context of the Torah is clear that intermarriage is about with the 7 nations. So many, I would say most authorities say, okay, but that's the context, but the prohibition, the biblical prohibition still applies to all non-Jews. But there are Rishonim, great medieval authorities say, no, it's only a rabbinic prohibition. Now, that's like, are you out of your mind? But even if it's only a rabbinic prohibition, it's still, we understand we can't always look at prohibitions on a technical level. Intermarriage was your ticket out of Judaism, and you were lost to the Jewish people. They sat shiva for you for good reasons. You knew when you left, you weren't coming back. You were angry, and you wanted nothing to do with Judaism. That's the only reason you intermarriage, and that was it. It was totally understood. So it doesn't really matter what the level of the prohibition is, but it was the way out. Today, I don't say thank God. I'm not sure how to phrase it. Today, it's not really true. Baruch Hashem, I think Baruch Hashem, couples today can intermarry and maintain a connection to Yiddishkeit, and sometimes come back to Yiddishkeit. That's something very unusual. If you don't mind, I always bring a glass of water with me, and I forgot to bring it. So give me 20 seconds. I'll get a glass of water, maybe 25 seconds. You can count. Hold on. Okay, I hope that's a little better. All right. What was I saying? Yeah, so intermarriage was a one-way ticket out. It's not true necessarily today. And I know of intermarried couples who have really come back, where when they got married, they didn't have an Orthodox conversion. But eventually, that happens. So anyways, but that's what he's saying. Hotzbat, idolatry, you're out the door. You're finished. Case Babel, Zerubbabel, the end of Babel came. This is in the 7-year period. The Persians take over. The Babylonians exile, that's in 586. 539, the Persians take over. Case Babel, Miketz, this week's Parsha, the end of 2 years, the end of the Babylonian reign. Zerubbabel, who is Zerubbabel? So Zerubbabel is one of the leaders of the Jewish people who come back, who are the leaders of the Jewish people. He wasn't one of the prophets as far as he was not a prophet, was not a Kohen, one of the leaders of the Jewish people when they came back. I think this is a Torah for Chanukah. I actually have the pasuk right here, right? This is in Zechariah. Zechariah was one of Chagai Zechariah Malachai, and some say Malachai was actually Mordechai of the Megillah. That's how the sages understood it. But those were the 3 prophets that were with the Jews at the beginning of the Second Temple. Rav Soloveitchik makes a big deal about this, and that we needed prophets to get the Second Temple built. We needed prophets to establish. If you remember, we learned the Anshe Knesset Hagdola Ubehem Kamen Nevi'im. made the Shmon Esrei, the Amidah that we're sort of in the middle of discussing, right? So that was done by the Anshe Knesset Gadol that included a few prophets. So Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi are the last of the prophets, and they're the ones during the beginning of the Second Temple period, and that's we read Zechariah. So this is Vayomer Vayomer Eli Zedvar Hashem El Zerubbabel Lemor. This is what God said to Zerubbabel. Lo b'chayav v'lo b'koach hi'im b'ruchi amar Hashem Sevaot. Not with strength and armor, whatever, but with the Spirit of God. That's a very famous verse that we like. Sort of yet, it's not that koach is unimportant, but of course the strength of the Jewish people is with our spirit, ruchi, and that's of course was our big fight with the Greeks that we put our emphasis on ruach, and they put their emphasis on the body. I mean, I always say that's the tension, right? There's a reason the Greeks invented the Olympics, and there is a reason the Olympics, and there's a reason the Greeks banned Brit Milah, because it's a mutilation of the body. So it's whatever. So that was the battle between, and of course, Greek mythology, the worship of the body, how humans turn into semi-gods. So that's Ruzo, but this is the strength of the Jewish people, comes from Kim Baruchi Amar Shem Tzavot. So that's this Zerubbabel, Kate Bavel, Zerubbabel, the Kate Shivim, at the end of 70 years, no Shati, at the end of 70 years, the Jewish people were redeemed.
That's in the Haftorah from the Shabbos.
That's what I said. Yeah, maybe I didn't say right. That's the that we picked this up, the Haftorah for Chanukah. Yeah. Listen, the Paitani obviously was quite learned. I just saw it literally at 9:00 this morning. So I really maybe for next year look through it. Somebody went through like all the I'm quoting some of them, like the Azashir, some of he went through in each stanza all the references to all the various biblical verses that all these words reference. We just highlighting a few. I didn't have a chance. I just saw it this morning. I didn't have a chance to go through it. It's on Safari. Somebody put a source sheet up on Safari. But anyways, yes. So that's the Haftorah L'Kei Shivim No Shati. Okay. Karot Komat Barosh Bikesh. So now that's God brought us in. And it's interesting. We're continuing, right? That was the Babylonians. Now we're the Egyptian Babylonians. Now we're up to the Persians. Yes, Kate's Bavel's after 70 years we can come back, but it wasn't so great. Karot Komash Barosh Bikesh Agagi ben Habdata. Agagi, of course, is Haman. Karot Komat. That refers to, I think, a tree. To cut down the Karot Komat. Komat is a tall tree. Karot Komat, Barosh Bikesh. She wanted to cut down a tall tree. Of course, I assume that's a reference to build a tree 50, to build the gallows 50 amot high to hang Mordechai. That, of course, he got hung on. But this tree became for him a trap. Like it's, when that's the irony of history. You build something for purpose A and it gets used totally against you for purpose, against you. So he built this tree to kill Mordechai. And of course, that's the exact tree that he got hung in. So but it's for him, a pachan mokesh was a trap for him. The gavato nishbata, his arrogance, gava, was destroyed, came to an end. Shabbat was rested, the same idea. Rosh Yemini Niseta ve'oyev shmo machita. Who's Rosh Yemini? It's Mordechai. Ish Udi Ayav Shushan v'shmo Mordechai ben Yair ben Kish ben Shivi Ish Yemini Asher Hagla Asher Haglam Yerushalayim Asher Haglam Nechanya Melech Yehuda. I believe Zerubbabel actually was a grandson of Yechanya. I have to double check that if somebody wants to check. Right, Yechanya, that's what we read in the Megillah. Mordechai, right? Asher Haklam Yerushalayim Imagola Asher Haklatim Yechanya Melech Yehuda, whatever. So Rosh Yemini, Ish Yemini, of course, is referring to Mordechai. But Oyev Shmo Machita, and the name of the enemy was wiped out. And this, of course, has to be a reference to Timche et Zecher Amalek, to wipe out Machita, Timchet Zecher Amalek. Haman, of course, is assumed. The rabbis place him as a descendant of Amalek. Oyev Shmo Machita. Of course, and that's the funny thing we say: wipe out Amalek. Don't Zachor Lo tishkach, don't forget them, right? We have to wipe out Amalek. Of course, we wipe out, but of course, we have to mention them. It's not like we wipe them out and it's if they don't exist in history anymore, then we don't learn anything from it. We wipe them out in terms of their ideology. And but we don't obviously we make reference to them. Rush. So here you have Rob Banav B'Kinyanav. What do you mean Rob Banav? The majority of his children and his possession, Allah Eitz Talita, were Haman got hung on the tree. So we know his 10 sons were hung. We read that in the Megillah. So what do you mean? He had 20, he had 19 sons and 10 out of the 19 were hung. Well, what do you mean, Rob Banav B'Kinyanav? So I have no idea. Maybe he did have 19 children. Maybe he had 28 children. Maybe it's not Rob, but I don't know. So what does it mean, Rob Banav B'Kinyanav? So what I think it means, or the way I understand it, is that the ideology, Rob Banav, we wiped out, at the time it was good. The Jewish people were saved. We make a holiday, Purim for all time, beautiful. But, unfortunately, Amalek still exists. That's Rav Soloveitchik's famous idea from his grandfather based on a diuk in a Rambam, based on his reading of a Rambam where the 7 nations no longer exist. We have to worry somebody's from 7 nations. But Amalek, the Rambam doesn't write that they no longer exist. I know not everybody accepts this, but so it's not that we know who's a biological descendant of Amalek, but the Rav explained that Amalek is an ideological concept, and basically it's a nation that hates the Jewish people for no reason. If you want to put it in modern terms, in other words, the Palestinians, the Egypt, that's for no reason. Their main reasons may be bad. We may not like it. It may be terrible. It may be evil people, but there's a reason they hate us. The Iranians, what do they hate us for? What do Iran? It's nothing to do with us. So that would be more like Amalek, or whatever different. I don't want to, but the idea is that Amalek is a pathological hatred of the Jewish people for no real reason. And because who was Amalek? Amalek attacked. We had nothing to do with Amalek. We left Egypt. We were going to Israel. We weren't going anywhere near Amalek. Yeah, we wanted. We asked Moab, Edom, can we pass? We didn't have to pass through Amalek. Nothing. There was absolutely no reason for them to attack. We didn't need water from them. We needed anything. So, but anyways, that's probably Rabbanav B'Kinyanav Allah Eitz Talita. He got hung. Okay. Yevanim Nikbetzu Alai. Then we finally get to Chanukah. We sing this on Chanukah, and I don't know. I should check. I don't know if this was composed for Chanukah. That's really, I mean, if you think about it, well, why have you composed for Chanukah? You can sing this on Purim. I can sing this on Pesach, right? Right? It's not. What about the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Persians? I don't think with Chanukah, but it's interesting. I don't know. I just have to. We sing it on Chanukah, but it's not only about Chanukah. One paragraph. That's all. One paragraph. Okay, Chanukah Mizbeach. Maybe the first paragraph too. Yevanim Nikbetzu Alai. The Greeks gathered a kibbutz upon us. Azai b'mechashmanim. So I probably by this word azai b'mechashmanim. So nobody translates the article of Corinth. They just say in the days of the Chashmonim. But in days of the Chashmonim would be May. Azai, I think, has a very like oy vay boy. Azai. It was like, can you believe? In the days of the Chashmonaim. So first of all, I looked before, so I don't know how this ties in, but according to Wikipedia and the historical sources, and that the Chashmonaim, the Hasmonean dynasty, only began in the year 141 BCE. That's 20 years after the story of Chanukah. So I don't know, but okay, you say they're descendants. We refer to them to the Chashmonim. I don't know, but that's just whatever that means. But the Chashmonim, Azai, it was the name of the Chashmonim. So we know, I don't know, this we're referring to, there was a lot of negativity towards the Chashmonaim. Chanukah, we mentioned last year, or for those who remember, I think we mentioned last year, that that one of the reasons, that the Chanukah is not really mentioned in the Mishnah. It's mentioned parenthetically, but not in reference to Chanukah. It's reference to the laws of damages. If I light my Chanukah candles outside and it causes a fire, who has to pay for the damages? You do. the one who puts there is an opinion, you don't have to pay for it. The person walking by has to be careful because you do a mitzvah. And then we say, no, you got to, you do the mitzvah. You can't cause a fire. Can't make a fire hazard. Can't put your Chanukah candles in the outside of it. It's going to, any chance of a fire hazard. But that's not really, but Chanukah, it's a side law. But Chanukah is not mentioned in the Mishnah. And there's one of the reasons given because Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wasn't so happy. The Chashmonim, they usurped, they crossed that line that I wish we would learn today not to cross. They mixed politics and religion. We said many times, when you mix politics and religion, you get, as Jonathan Sachs said, you get bad politics and worse religion. Judaism believes in separation of church and state, and boy, anybody alive today, boy, do we see it. When you mix religion and politics, what a chilul Hashem it causes. And it's just really terrible because by definition, politics is dirty. That's what politics is. It's also compromise, even that word, it's deal breaking, it's lying. We know what politics is. That's the way, that is politics. As Rav Soloveitchik said, politics is kulo sheker. I heard that many times from Rav Shechter quoting Rav Soloveitchik many times. Politics is kulo sheker. That's how politics works. Backstabbing. Yosef, if you listen to my podcast this week, the butler, he doesn't talk about Yosef. It's all about getting ahead. What's in it for me? That's how politics works. Sadly, religion is pure and holy and wonderful. So we want to. America is the most religious country in the Western world. But I understand that there are more Americans who go to church on Sunday than Iranians. I read this a while ago. I don't know if to go to mosque. That's amazing. You know why? Because in America, it's freedom of religion. There's no when you impose a religion, people hate it. Look at Israel, how people don't like it when you force a religion. When you have freedom of religion, you guarantee constitutionally, it's much better. Anyways, I don't want to. And this is not my political view. This is a view of the Torah, I believe. And that's why the Kohanim are Kohanim and the Shevet Yehuda is Shevet Yehuda. And the Ramban has a very strong attack. It was inappropriate. The Chashmonim, well, what are the Kohanim taking over the Melucha? And we know how corrupt they became. We know historically the Chashmonim became all corrupt. They all very negative things. So I don't know why. I'm not sure if, I'm guessing there was an argument whether Chanukah should even be a holiday. That's not, we don't have time to discuss why it would be a holiday. But on that level, so some say Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is a descendant of from the Davidic dynasty, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi from Hillel, from that. They don't want to mention in the Mishnah. This is said by many of the commentators. It's a fascinating thing. So I don't know. Azai bimei chashmonim. So it's there is much critique of the Chashmonim, and that's not what we celebrate on Chanukah. We've turned Chanukah into a spiritual holiday, light and hope, and and light against darkness. We don't talk about the Gemara doesn't mention the military victory. When the Gemara talks, there's not one word about the military victory. And even Al Hanisim, it talks about God saved us, but it's not about so much victory. Anyway, that's just something to think about, but important lesson, I think, of Chanukah. So, and anyways, in the time of the Chashmonaim, parts of Chom and Migdalai, they broke our temple, our towers. Like there were, with Timu called Hashmanim, they impurified, they made so we couldn't use the oil, which isn't really true, right? The reason we have Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin, all the commentaries say, it's the only mitzvah we have that. Basic mitzvah, Mahadrin, do it even better. Like, one candle every night, doesn't matter. Every house, one candle night. That's is good enough. Now you have 5 people in the home, 5 candles every night. Ooh, Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin. There's not one Jew in the world who doesn't do Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin, because the commentaries explain we didn't need the miracle. The Jewish law states that everybody is impure.
Take note of it.
If Tuma Hutra B'tzibur, that if, like we have even on Korban Pesach, if the majority of the people are impure, you can bring a Korban Pesach. It's only if a minority, like you're impure, everybody's pure, then you can't bring. But Tuma Hutra B'tzibur, so they could have lit the oil, they could have lit the menorah with impure oil. But God made a miracle, so they didn't need to. So that's, so it's really, that's the extra thing. So God sort of went out of his way when it wasn't needed. So we go out of our way to do Mahadrim. That's, I think, the classical explanation why we have that. But Umino Tarkan Kanim, from the leftovers of the one cruise of oil, Nasa Neish Lashoshanim, a miracle happened. B'nei Bina Yimesh Menah Kavushir Nanim. The wise people, for 8 days, made a holiday singing shir or renanim, shlish rina v'shira, right? Now, why is it B'nai Bina? It's getting late, but just very quickly. B'nai Bina, so I mentioned, I think we spoke about last year, Chanukah really shouldn't be a holiday. Chanukah should be a second Tisha B'Av. What do we celebrate on Chanukah? The menorah, the rededication of the temple. Great. We don't have a temple anymore. Why don't we celebrate on Tisha B'Av? They once had a temple. Let's celebrate Tisha B'Av. Did they remember the temple? Chanukah, they remember the temple. What do you mean? We should be mourning. The temple is destroyed. Oh, Jewish sovereignty, like the Rambam writes. Jewish sovereignty. What Jewish sovereignty? The Jews are living in exile. Are persecuted left and right. That's what Maoz Tzur is all about. What are we celebrating? Chanukah should be a day of mourning. It should be a week of mourning. B'nai Bina, it took great wisdom for the rabbis to say, "No, what? You know what? Yeah, we have mourning. We'll mourn on Tisha B'Av, not Chanukah." The Jewish people have hope. We could lo b'chai v'lo b'kol kim b'ruchi. We will come back. There's always that light in the darkness. We're going to have a long exile. The rabbis kind of intuited. They knew. They told Rabbi Akiva thought Bar Kokhba was a Mashiach. So Rabbi Akiva, you're crazy. No, we're not coming back so soon. Right? Bar Kokhba was basically 70 years later, like 70 years, the first temple. Rabbi Akiva, that's why he was so into it. No. It's going to be a long exile. The rabbis knew it was going to be a long exile. So, no, we're going to give you a little hope. Don't worry, we are coming back. We can't only mourn. So that took great brilliance, great genius of the Jewish people to allow us to celebrate Chanukah, and that's why we converted it. Our home becomes our temple. The menorah was only lit in the Beit HaMikdash. I would argue that right until the year 70, nobody lit the menorah at home. The lighting of the menorah in your home only began after the destruction of the temple. I don't have any proof for this. But that's the way I think there's a hint for it in the Gemara. Right, the menorah was lit in the temple. So that's where I think B'nai Bina took great insight. Bina Yetera, great insight to make a holiday for 8 days. We won't discuss why 8 days, not 7 days. And then very quickly, the last paragraph, this is the polemic. This is already a prayer. The last four were historical. The Egyptians, Babylonian, Persians, Greeks, and now God stretch out your arm. This was censored for many, many years. The Kara Ketze Yeshua, and bring the redemption close. We've been in exile 1,200 years already when this is written. Nekom nikmat avadacha, take revenge avenge the suffering of your servants. That's us. Me umah harasha, from this terrible nation. That's the reference to Christianity. Ki archa lanu asha. It's very long. It's been very long already, over 1,000 years. The ain kates limeherat. There's no end. Before we had kates Bavel, Zerubbabel, but here there's no end. The exile is going on and on. This is written 900 years ago, 800 years ago. The chayat mon b'tzel tzalmon, pushed them aside. The tzayat mon is a reference to Edom, which is a reference to Rome, which is a reference to Christianity. Hakem lana roim shiva. I didn't check. Who are the roim shiva? That's probably from the on Sukkot, and restored the sheep, the shepherds of the Jewish people, right? Avram is a shepherd, Moshe is a shepherd, David is a shepherd. Shepherding is sort of right. We won't get into that's with the Egyptians and the Jews. But this last paragraph is a paragraph that God should. It's enough already, enough of exile, and it's time to come back. And it's not direct, but all the commentary, all the articles I've seen all discuss that it is a reference. We know Atmon is a reference to Edom and to Rome, and which is Christianity. So we pray, Baruch Hashem, our relations with Christians are much better than they were. Our generation's been very fortunate. And we can pray that our relations with Muslims will go back to the way it once was, when it was also much better. And there are signs, Baruch Hashem. Listen, I do think it's important to recognize, we all know, I don't have to tell anybody how difficult the year it's been, but there have been tremendous miracles this year. I mean, I don't think, if you would have told anybody that we could defeat Hezbollah, I know they're not totally destroyed, with so little loss. I mean, they were afraid literally tens of thousands of Jews were going to die. They thought they were going to wipe out 50 skyscrapers in Tel Aviv, 150,000 rockets. It's like unbelievable. Like, can you imagine getting the pager? It's like in the movies, you don't even have this. It's like astounding. Like, we don't think, what an amazing miracle. Bayamim ahim, that's what She'asa Nisim Avoteinu, Bayamim ahim b'hazman hazeh. You know, that's it's unbelievable. So the military has been astounding. It's not finished, it's not perfect, and of course it's come at a high price, but still come at a much lower price than the War of Independence. The War of Independence, 1% of the Jewish population in Israel was killed. So I don't want to say put in perspective. That's not bad, but we do have, that's Jewish history, that the mourning and the suffering, but we look forward to the redemption, and hopefully we are closer. We're getting closer, and we are, Baruch Hashem, we do have peace with a number of the Muslim countries, and hopefully it will expand. And let's pray that we can add a seventh paragraph to Maoz, that we, or go back to the first paragraph, that we'll be able to tikun beit tefilati v'sham todah nizabeach. That's we should merit to that. Okay, that's basically what we talked about. Maoz, we talked about Yosef in the pit, 20 amot, they couldn't see, right? On to save, and Maoz being composed in the Middle Ages during a time of great persecution of the Jewish people. I don't know. I just see a word about melody. I have, the melody Maoz. The only thing I know about it is they say it's comes from a German. It's a German melody, which is kind of ironic, like a non-Jewish melody. That's what I understand. Whether it's a church melody, that I don't know. I remember Rav Gemara, those who know Rabbi Gemara in Toronto, a number of years ago. I mean, he gave a fascinating shiur. I'm talking about how in Italy, it's well known, we have sources, but they don't normally teach you this in yeshiva, that the chazanim in Italy would go to church and would sit in the back of the church to pick up ideas for tunes. You know, the church choirs, it sounds a little bit, you know, whatever, but okay. So I don't exactly know, but it's not a Jewish tune. Maoz or Yeshua. I don't know, but we'll have to ask some historian, but thank you for that. But it does trace the history. Let's see, any more comments, questions? I see a couple of things here. Let me just go back. Okay, Chanukah Sameach. Never saw it till Art Scroll. I assume that's Shehem Mishtakim Lehev of Arik. Yeah, it's probably in the Koran too. I'm just have the Koran. Oh, I have the RCA. I'm just curious, do they have it in brackets still? As Aleinu, is Shehem Mishtachavim Lehev of Arik still put in brackets? Yes, it's still in brackets. The RCA Siddur still has it in brackets. Let's see, does Art Scroll still have it in brackets? So, you know, in brackets, you can skip the brackets, you know, like it's funny. It's that they still keep it in brackets. Art Scroll also has it in brackets. Yeah, Art Scroll also has brackets. Interesting. Okay. There's a hesitation to bring it back. We don't include it. Yeah, I don't say it either. And it doesn't fit in with the tune. Usually, okay. I learned in Moshe in the 60s. You learned what? Shehem Mishtachavim Lehev of Arik?
They were singing in Moshe.
Yeah, so I was in Moshe too. That's what Yitzchak said not to say it. So I have said it in different times in my whatever. I generally don't say it. What can I tell you? Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, different. I mean, you know, when they take it out of the brackets, I'll reconsider. I don't know what to tell you. The Art Scroll Siddur, yes, the Art Scroll does have a bit. Thank you, Larry. On Maoz, also Koran has a little bit, but none of them go through line by line. Like my commentaries on the Siddur, they go through. It's much more in depth. You don't see it here. Some of them don't even comment on it at all. I don't know. Maybe there's some modern stuff and scholarship I'm not up on. Maybe. Minabeach from Noveach, bark. Oh, is that what they use? That's interesting. I don't know. Could be.
Minabeach is not mouth, so Noveach is a dog barking.
Right. So how does Art Scroll? I think Art Scroll maybe does use that word. Let me check. If I can find it here. I had it before. Maoz, no, blaspheming. Interesting. Art Scroll says, when you will have prepared the slaughter for the blaspheming foe, and here in the RCA Siddur, the loudmouth foe. There's a big difference between loudmouth and blasphemy. It's interesting. Blasphemy is something terrible. Loudmouth is you're just like a loudmouth, you know. We don't like you, but it's not quite the same thing. Interesting. Translations are commentaries, as we all know. Okay, I don't know exactly what it means, but could be. Then it refers to Egypt. I don't know. Well, means barking. Here you go. You're right. Could lead to idea of loud mouth. Okay. Avoid intermixing of people. Yeah. Thinking. I know of several intermarried couples when they eventually became from. Absolutely. When the non-Jewish wife converted, kids went to Jewish day school. Correct. That's my point. It does. It's not typical, but it for sure happens. It's not the way out. And today, I don't think anybody in our community, maybe in other communities, would say to sit shiva if a child were God forbid intermarried. We don't do that. And I told you, Mark Shapiro told us it's not in print, but somebody asked the Sri Aish, Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, his son is intermarrying. What should he do? And the Sri Aish says, go to the wedding. We don't cut off children today. It's a different era. They're not intermarrying because they're intermarrying because that's culture. The goyim accept us. They fall in love in chemistry class at university, and whatever. That's the way it works. So it's interesting, but okay. The pasuk is on the facade of the shul. Which pasuk? Lo b'chayil below b'koach. I'm assuming, Bina. Is that the verse you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lo b'koach. Yeah. Warriors don't sing the last verse. Interesting. They don't sing the last verse. Yeah, I think that's okay. They still have the censored version. Did they say Shehem Mishtachavim at Breuer's? I definitely last year. I gave a whole share all the interesting things they do at Breuer, but I don't remember because they don't sing Aleinu. I don't know if they say Shehem Mishtachavim. But I find that very interesting that they don't sing the land verse. Okay, the melody master. Yeah. So I don't know exactly, but that's it. Okay. Any other?
Rabbi?
Yes.
When I was a kid, the last two lines of Maoz Tzur were different, I think because of censorship. I don't remember what they were, but they're just completely different. Last two lines of Maoz Tzur.
The wording,
Completely different words. Every year I try to remember what they are when I sing it, but I get confused.
Oh. All right, so that's very interesting. I have no idea. I'll have to look in it.
Different points.
You know what? I didn't have a chance. I'll have to I'll pull this out. He might have. This is one of the scholarly books that I use. I don't know, it's busy, whatever. And I meant to look here. I'll see if he discusses it. Jewish liturgy, Elbogen. He was, I believe, a Reform rabbi. He taught at HUC, and it was written in German. I don't know where he taught, but it's over 100 years old. But this is like a really scholarly work at the development of the Siddur and different customs, different things. So I'll have to take a look if he mentioned Maser, but that's interesting. They had totally different words than the words we have now.
Yeah, the last two lines, and
Yeah,
I just
okay.
don't remember that. But
The Arkalana, because now we just say, how the evil isn't ending, the hardships aren't ending. Push aside the enemy. Okay, I don't know what that was. Very good. Okay, everybody, I want to wish you Chanukah Sameach and.
Anybody think that it was written by somebody named Mordechai because of the first initials?
Right. Right. So of course the chet doesn't fit in. There are only 5. Correct.
Mordechai Chazak.
Is that added on?
Wrong. Mordechai Chazak.
Mordechai Chazak, like Shlomo Levi Alkabetz. Yeah, I don't know.
Kachecha is Chazak. Chasof Zero Kachecha.
Okay, yeah, Chazak, but just the chet. Yeah, that they do sometimes. Okay.
Kachecha spans those 3 words. Chazak.
Yeah, Chazak. Oh, yeah. Oh, the first 3 words are the Rosh Hashanah Chazak. Yeah, very good. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, please God, we'll see you next week and before, and then my friend Rabbi Liebtag all our Rabbi Schumann's back. Many of the classes that didn't happen last week will be happening this week. Some of them, not Mark Shapiro and not Natty Help God, but Shuli Mishkin will be back this week, and Rabbi Schumann will be teaching this week, and so that's and of course Rabbi Liebtag taught last week and this week. So we look forward to learning with you. Please invite a friend. Shabbat Shalom. Enjoy the beautiful building. Hopefully for Shabbos Mevarchim, Hallel, singing, and let's see the positive, the light, the beautiful points of Chanukah. Okay, be well, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.